Meet my son, Trey. His due date was December 5th, 2021, but due to my complications with preeclampsia, he was born on September 2nd, 2021. His prematurity is the reason he had to be admitted into the NICU, or neonatal intensive care unit. There are 8 different emotions I felt as a parent to a baby in the NICU: self-blame, disappointment, anger, fear, loneliness, excitement, relief, and post-home joy. Self-blame was the first feeling I felt. I spent a lot of time bouncing between thoughts of happiness and sadness. I felt regretful that I hadn't maintained better health over the years. It wasn't until I remembered that the present is more important than the past that I finally stopped blaming myself for my son's prematurity. When my son was first admitted to the NICU, we were told he would be released around his due date. When Christmas came and went, the disappointment set in. I worked in a hospital where my son was a patient, so I was asked often when my son would be able to come home. I never had any answers, and that only made me feel worse. After a while, anger set in. My son wasn't making much progress. I grew tired of people saying everything will get better, especially when I began to notice other babies born after him being discharged from the hospital. I just felt powerless. When my son had his first SVT, or supraventricular tachycardia, I can't say that. When my son had his first SVT, or supraventricular tachycardia, it was the first time I feared he might pass away. I had the same fear when he stopped breathing and had to be intubated. I couldn't hold him for a whole month, and during that time, he was stuck in limbo. Nothing changed. On top of all of that, I had major trust issues with leaving him in the hospital overnight. Fear is what drove me to remove myself from all the NICU support groups I joined on Facebook. It was just too much. I had a severe case of postpartum depression. Not being able to take my son home day after day really took its toll on me. Even though I had the unwavering support of my husband, I still felt alone, very sad, and extremely depressed. No one seemed to fully understand my situation. It was rough not having anyone to relate to. Then one day, my son started making some real progress and began breathing on his own. I almost cried when they removed his oxygen because that was the first time I had seen his face without anything extra attached to it. He was so beautiful to me. He began to have good nights without any issues. After he got his G-tube, the talks began about discharging him from the hospital. My pause button was officially relieved of its duties. I found a job working from home, which made the transition so much easier. I also began to understand the necessity of my son's NICU stay. Had he not stayed in the hospital those 8 months, he wouldn't have made as much progress post coming home. The first few months of my son being at home, I was incredibly nervous. I was on high alert, always checking his breathing and running to his aid every time he cried. It wasn't until he was taken off 3 of the 4 medications he was released on, and I observed his progress in real time, that I started to rest. Sure, we still have challenges with the G-tube and a couple of other developmental delays, but we are thriving, and it makes me so happy. I appreciate you for taking time to listen to a snippet of my family's NICU journey. It was quite the ride, and we are still rolling.